The lights of the studio are always bright, but on this day, they feel almost blinding. The air inside ABC's, the view carries that familiar charge, half expectation, half unpredictability. The audience files in, laughter and chatter filling. The space, unaware that they're minutes away from witnessing something that will ripple far beyond these walls. At the center of the stage, the table gleams under studio lights, and the hosts settle into their familiar places. Whoopi Goldberg, the anchor of the panel, commands presence before even speaking, her expressions alone enough to steer the direction of conversation. To her left and right, the co-hosts shuffle notes, sip coffee, and prepare for another round of spirited debate. And then the guest arrives. Timothée Chalamet. The audience bursts into applause, whistles echoing, some fans standing to catch a glimpse of the young star. He's greeted like the prodigy. He is Hollywood's magnetic force, whose every role seems to resonate with a restless generation searching for its voice. With his signature mix of charm and quiet intensity, Timothée slides into his chair, waving modestly at the crowd before settling in. For a moment, the atmosphere feels typical, even routine. The discussion begins lightly, centering on his latest film, his career trajectory, and his unique place in Hollywood's evolving landscape. But beneath the surface, something sharper is waiting to break through. Whoopi leans in first. Her tone is warm, but her words are edged with a challenge. She asks not just about the movie, but about responsibility, about what it means for a young actor idolized by millions to speak on matters of politics, culture, and social change. The question isn't casual. It's layered, pointed, and it carries the weight of someone who has lived decades in the public eye. Someone who understands both the power and the peril of celebrity voices. Timothée smiles faintly, brushing back his hair, pausing before he answers. And when he does, his words are steady, deliberate, and unapologetic. He insists that silence is dangerous, that to ignore injustice, or to hide behind the safety of neutrality, is itself a kind of complicity. The studio quiets. The applause that had greeted his arrival gives way to silence, then murmurs. Some nod approvingly, others shift uneasily. In their seats, for Whoopi, the statement is not surprising, but it strikes a nerve. She tilts her head, her eyes narrowing with a blend of curiosity and authority. She challenges him again, pressing deeper. Isn't it reckless, she asks, for young celebrities to weigh in on complex issues they might not fully understand? Isn't it dangerous to use influence without the maturity to grasp its consequences? The tension thickens, hanging over the room like a storm cloud. The other panelists glance between them, uncertain whether to intervene or let the moment unfold. The camera zooms tighter, alternating between Whoopi's piercing stare and Timothée's calm, unyielding gaze. The exchange is no longer about a film. It's about generational divides. It's about power. It's about two very different figures colliding in real time. One, a Hollywood veteran whose authority has been shaped over decades of navigating controversy. The other, a rising star, whose generation refuses to remain silent in the face of injustice. The audience can feel it. Every sigh, every cough, every shuffle of movement in the studio feels amplified against the silence. The applause sign flashes, but even then, the clapping feels uneven, fractured, half the crowd leaning toward Timothée's conviction, the other half aligning with Whoopi's caution. And then something shifts. Whoopi raises her hand, silencing the noise, and reminds him and everyone watching at home that words on national television have consequences. She speaks with the authority of someone who has lived through public scrutiny, who has carried the scars of misinterpreted statements and canceled projects. Her voice rises, steady and commanding. There's responsibility in knowing when to speak and when not to. Timothée does not retreat. Instead, he leans closer to the table, his voice quiet but firm. But isn't silence also a choice? He asks, and isn't that the most dangerous choice of all? Gasps ripple across the audience. A few clap instinctively, while others exchange glances, unsure of what they've just witnessed. For a moment, Whoopi is silent, her expression unreadable, caught between defiance and contemplation. The moment crystallizes. The cameras capture it, the tension in the air, the widening gulf between two voices, two philosophies, two generations. This is no longer an interview. It is a battle of ideals, unfolding live before millions dot behind the cameras. Producers exchange frantic looks. The segment was supposed to flow lightly, a mix of promotion and personality. Instead, it has become a cultural flashpoint. Timothée, usually known for his artistic restraint, is unflinching. His youth, far from being a weakness, becomes his weapon. He speaks for his peers, for a generation impatient with excuses, unwilling to remain bystanders. His words echo across the studio like a challenge. If those of us with a platform stay quiet, who will speak? If we avoid discomfort, aren't we just preserving the same injustices we claim to oppose? The tension is now palpable. You can hear it in the silence between sentences, in the nervous laughter that occasionally bubbles up from the audience, in the shifting posture of the co-hosts, trying to gauge where the conversation will land out, and through it all, the cameras linger. On Whoopi's furrowed brow, on Timothée's steady gaze, on the audience caught between admiration and shock. What was meant to be a promotional appearance has turned into something else entirely, a confrontation that no one expected. Yet everyone will remember. The storm has only just begun, and as the first commercial break looms, the question hangs heavy in the air. Has Timothée Chalamet just crossed a line, or has he drawn one? One thing is certain. This is not the kind of moment that fades when the cameras cut. This is the kind of moment that will be replayed, dissected, and argued over long after the lights dim and the stage clears. The break ends, and when the cameras return, the air feels heavier than before. The chatter of the audience has died down, replaced by an almost nervous stillness. The hosts shuffle their cards, but everyone knows the conversation is no longer about the film. Something deeper has been unleashed, something raw. It begins again with Whoopi. Her voice carries that unmistakable weight, the authority of someone who has sat at this table for decades. She looks at Timothée with a measured calm, her words deliberate. She tells him that there is a difference between passion and wisdom, between speaking from emotion and speaking with the full awareness of consequence. Her eyes never leave him, as if daring him to break under the pressure. But he doesn't. Instead, Timothée lets her finish, nodding slightly, as though absorbing every word. And then, quietly, almost too softly at first, he answers. He says that the very idea of waiting until one has perfect wisdom is flawed, because by then, the chance to act might already be gone. He speaks of climate change, of racial injustice, of inequality, and how silence from those in positions of visibility only worsens the harm. The crowd shifts. There's a wave of applause, but it doesn't last long before boos and groans interrupt. It's a live, unscripted clash, and the audience is no longer passive. They're participants. The other co-hosts exchange nervous glances. Joy Behar leans forward, her voice cutting in, trying to soften the blow. She asks Timothée if he worries about alienating parts of his audience, about being seen as polarizing instead of unifying. It's a lifeline, a chance to steer the conversation away from direct confrontation. But Timothée doesn't take it. Instead, he dives deeper. He admits that yes, there is risk in speaking, but that risk pales in comparison to the cost of silence. Audience erupts again, this time louder. Some cheer, some boo, and the cacophony seems to shake the studio. Whoopi waits for the noise to die down, and when it does, her voice cuts through like a blade. She tells him that responsibility isn't just about speaking, but about how one speaks. That influence is a double-edged sword. It can inspire, but it can also mislead. She points to moments in history where celebrities championed causes only to later backtrack, leaving fans confused or betrayed. Timothée doesn't blink. He leans forward, elbows on the table, and challenges her directly. He asks whether the fear of saying the wrong thing should outweigh the urgency of saying anything at all. He tells her, in front of millions watching at home, that silence isn't neutral. It's endorsement. There's a pause. The kind of pause that stretches seconds into an eternity. The cameras linger on Whoopi, her expression shifting between frustration and recognition. For the audience, it's like watching two tectonic plates collide, neither willing to give way. One of the younger co-hosts, Alyssa Farah Griffin, finally steps in. She tries to mediate, noting that both sides have valid points, that responsibility and urgency must go hand in hand. But her words barely land. The tension at the table is too strong, too consuming. And then Timothée says something that tilts the room on its axis. He points out that Whoopi herself once spoke out fiercely during moments when silence would have been safer. He doesn't. Named specifics not yet, but the implication is clear. He is reminding her, and everyone else, that she too has chosen courage over caution in her career. The audience gasps. A ripple of murmurs spreads through the studio, and all eyes return to Whoopi. She sits back in her chair, her gaze fixed on him, her face unreadable. The tension is thick enough to feel, even for viewers at home, that the debate is no longer abstract. It is personal. It is two icons from two different generations, holding up mirrors to one another. The crowd feels it, the panel feels it, and the producers behind the cameras feel it most of all. What was supposed to be another segment of daytime television has become a clash of philosophies that refuses to resolve neatly. The voices of the crowd rise again, applause, shouts, whistles, gasps, and in the midst of the noise, Whoopi raises her hand. The studio falls silent. Her voice is steady, commanding. She says that accountability is not optional, that words have power, and that the measure of influence is not in the speaking, but in the responsibility that follows. She leans forward and locks eyes with Timothée. You don't just speak because you can. You speak because you know you'll stand by every word, no matter what comes. The weight of the statement hangs heavy. The other co-hosts nod cautiously. The audience bursts into applause, but it's fragmented, divided. Timothée doesn't rush to respond. He lets the noise fade before he answers, his voice calm, almost haunting. And isn't that the point? That if you're afraid of the consequences, maybe that's proof the words need to be said. Gasps echo through the studio. Some rise to their feet cheering. Others shake their heads in disbelief. The clash is no longer just about opinions. It has become a battle line between two worldviews, one shaped by caution and endurance, other by urgency and conviction. The cameras zoom in tighter. Timothée's calm resolve, Whoopi's unflinching stare. The audience caught in the middle, living witnesses to a moment that feels less like daytime television and more like a cultural reckoning. By the time the second break nears, the energy in the room is unlike anything The View has seen in years. Social media producers in the control room are already clipping sound bites, sensing the viral storm that is about to erupt. The audience, both in the studio and at home, sits on edge, waiting, wondering. This is no longer an interview. This is no longer promotion. This is confrontation, live and unfiltered, where neither side is willing to retreat. And as the music swells and the camera fades to black, the question lingers like smoke in the air. Who truly holds the power in This exchange, the seasoned veteran who has spent decades navigating the dangers of public life, or the fearless young star who refuses to remain silent, no matter the cost? The answer will not come easily. Not today. Not in this moment. But one thing is undeniable. The spark has been lit, and the fire is only beginning to spread. The studio lights glare down with the same intensity, but the atmosphere has shifted completely. What began as a conversation is now something closer. To a duel. Timothée sits straighter, his face calm but his words sharpened, every sentence delivered with precision. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't falter. He simply leans into the tension. And then, with the confidence of someone who came prepared, he reminds Whoopi of her own history. He recalls moments when she herself took risks, when her voice cut through silence in ways that inspired millions. He points out interviews, archived clips where she declared that silence was complicity, that standing on the sidelines was never an option. The words are hers, not his. And in that moment, he turns them into a mirror. The audience reacts instantly. A wave of shock ripples through the studio, gasps and murmurs cascading like a chain reaction. Whoopi's face remains steady, but her eyes flicker, betraying just a hint of surprise. The cameras zoom in tighter, capturing every detail, the slight pause in her breathing, the tension in her jaw. For years, she has commanded this table with authority, but now she finds herself on the receiving end of her own logic, wielded by someone half her age. The panelists glance nervously at one another. Joy looks down, fiddling with her cards. Sunny Hostin presses her lips together, resisting the urge to step in. The tension is thick, suffocating, and the audience senses that something unprecedented is unfolding before them. Timothée continues, his words measured, his tone respectful but unwavering. He isn't attacking her. He's holding her accountable to her own standard. He reminds her that her courage inspired him, that her outspokenness gave younger voices permission to speak. And yet now, she warns him of the very risks she once defied. It's a reversal no one saw coming, and the silence that follows is louder than any applause. Whoopi leans back in her chair, her expression unreadable. She inhales deeply, and for a moment it seems as if she might dismiss his words. But the cameras catch the flicker of recognition in her eyes. She knows the quotes are real. She knows the moments he references cannot be erased. The audience sits frozen, waiting for her response. The control room buzzes with nervous energy. Producers whisper into headsets, debating whether to cut to break. But the rawness of the moment is too powerful to interrupt. This is television gold, unscripted, unplanned, unforgettable. The audience erupts again, torn down the middle. Half cheer Timothée for his bravery, the other half murmur in discomfort at seeing Whoopi challenged so directly on her own stage. The noise crescendos until Whoopi raises her hand, demanding silence. And silence comes, swift and total. Her voice is calm, but the steel beneath it is unmistakable. She tells Timothée that yes, she has spoken out in the past, but she did so knowing the risks, prepared to face the consequences. She warns him again that the fire of public opinion can consume faster than it uplifts. Her words carry the gravity of experience, of decades lived in the spotlight, of scars the audience may never see. But Timothée does not retreat. He leans forward, his tone soft, but his conviction unbreakable. He tells her that consequences are inevitable, but silence is unforgivable. He insists that her past courage proves his point, that if she had stayed quiet, if she had waited for perfect safety, those defining moments in her career would never have existed. The audience gasps again, louder this time, as though each word drives the tension deeper. The panel sits in silence, stunned by the clarity and confidence of someone so young, someone unafraid to confront one of Hollywood's most formidable voices with her own legacy. Whoopi holds his gaze. Seconds stretch into what feels like minutes. The cameras capture it perfectly, the locked eyes, the stillness, the weight of two generations colliding in real time. The tension is unbearable. And just before the break, as the applause sign flashes and the music swells, one thought lingers in the air, unspoken but undeniable. The balance of power at this table has shifted, and nothing about this conversation will ever return to what it was before. The silence doesn't last long. As soon as the cameras return, the tension explodes. Joy Behar, sensing the unease, tries to crack a joke, to reset the atmosphere, but it falls flat. The audience isn't laughing. They're waiting. And then Whoopi speaks. Her voice rises, firm and cutting through the noise. This isn't about me. It's about accountability. The words land heavy, reverberating across the studio. Timothée doesn't flinch. He doesn't match her volume. Instead, he lowers his voice, forcing everyone to lean in, to hang on each syllable. And accountability, he says slowly, applies to all of us. The crowd erupts. A thunderous mix of applause, cheers, and jeers rattles the set. Some leap to their feet, others shake their heads, but the energy is chaotic, uncontainable. The camera pans across the audience faces, wide with shock, mouths covered with hands, others shouting their support. It feels less like a morning talk, show and more like an arena, two figures locked in battle at the center of the stage. Whoopi leans forward, her hands gripping the table, her voice sharp. "You don't understand the weight that comes with this platform," she says, her words measured but edged with frustration. "It's not just about what you say, it's about the firestorm it creates. And when that firestorm comes, you don't get to walk away." Timothée meets her gaze without wavering. He doesn't look away, doesn't falter. "Then maybe the firestorm is necessary," he replies. "Maybe comfort is the problem." Gasps ripple through the studio. The moment feels electric, almost dangerous. For a second, it seems the set itself might collapse under the force of the exchange. The co-hosts sit frozen, their faces a mixture of awe and alarm. The cameras tighten on Whoopi. Her jaw clenches, her eyes narrow. She is not used to being challenged so directly, especially not in her own house, in front of her own audience. The air grows heavy with the weight of her silence, every second stretching like a taut wire, ready to snap taut. And then the audience noise swells again, cheers colliding with boos. The room split in two. It's no longer just about what's being said, it's about what it represents. Generational tension, power, fear, courage. Producers in the control room lean forward, whispering urgently into headsets. But the director doesn't cut away. This is the moment they've been waiting for, the kind of unscripted television that will dominate headlines, a kind that trends before the segment even ends. Whoopi exhales slowly, leaning back in her chair. Her silence now feels more dangerous than any comeback. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the unreadable expression of someone calculating, weighing, deciding whether to push back harder or let the moment speak for itself. Timothée sits calm, almost serene, his posture relaxed, but his words echo in the minds of everyone present. Accountability applies to all of us. The set has never felt smaller, never felt more fragile. The audience senses it too, the feeling that they are not just witnessing a debate, but a cultural shift unfolding live. The music rises. The applause sign flashes, but the energy refuses to settle. The noise crashes like waves, loud, uneven, uncontrollable. And as the screen fades to commercial, one truth is clear. This clash has gone far beyond entertainment. This is a reckoning, and neither side is backing down. The moment the segment ends, the studio feels like it's still vibrating. The audience stirs with restless energy, some still clapping, others whispering as if they've witnessed something they're not quite sure how to process. The music plays, the cameras fade to black, but nothing about what just unfolded feels finished. It lingers in the air, in the silence between breaths, in the glance of the co-hosts who know they've just been part of something that will echo far beyond this stage. Backstage, the producers move quickly, their phones already buzzing. With notifications, clips are being cut in real time, hashtags drafted before the credits have even rolled. What happened at that table is already spilling into the digital world, where millions more will watch, react, and divide themselves along the same fault. Lines that split the studio audience. On Twitter, within minutes, the hashtags begin trending. Hashtag Chalamet on the View surges, followed by hashtag Whoopi vs Timothée. TikTok is flooded with short clips replaying the exact moment he leaned forward and said, "Accountability applies to all of us." The clip is looped, remixed, set to dramatic music, analyzed frame by frame. Instagram fills with screenshots of Whoopi's stare, side by side with Timothy's calm expression. The internet has claimed the moment, reshaping it into something even bigger than what it was live. News outlets pick it up almost instantly. Headlines flash across screens. Timothée Chalamet clashes with Whoopi Goldberg on The View. Others frame it differently. Generational divide explodes on daytime TV. Some praise him for his boldness, calling it a defining moment of his public persona. Others accuse him of arrogance, of disrespecting a veteran who paved the way for voices. Like his the co-hosts, usually so quick to move on after heated debates, linger on the set. Their faces betray what they're feeling, that they've just been part of a cultural moment no one could have scripted. Joy shakes her head, muttering under her breath, still stunned. Sunny looks thoughtful, as if replaying the conversation. In her mind, Elisa stares into the crowd, wide-eyed, knowing full well what kind of headlines are already being drafted outside these walls. And then there's Whoopi. She doesn't speak as the cameras cut. She doesn't rush to defend herself or try to reclaim the moment. She sits still, calm, her face composed, though her eyes suggest the weight of reflection. For decades, she has been the anchor of this show, the figure who could settle a room with a single word. Today, she was challenged in a way few have dared, and the echoes of that challenge refuse to fade. Timothy, too, doesn't gloat. He doesn't smile triumphantly or bask in the reaction. He sits quietly, sipping water, as if aware of the storm that has already begun swirling around him. He knows the consequences are coming, the firestorm Whoopi warned him about. But he also knows this. He didn't back down, and that choice will define how millions see him from this moment forward. As the day unfolds, reactions pour in. Celebrities tweet their support or criticism. Commentators on cable news seize on the moment, dissecting every line, every gesture. Some frame it as arrogance versus wisdom. Others frame it as courage versus caution. But the truth is Messier. The truth is that both voices carried weight, and the clash between them forced everyone watching to choose where they stood. On the streets outside, fans and critics alike gather, some defending Whoopi as a legend whose authority deserves respect. Others praising Timothée for his bravery in refusing to yield. It is no longer just about the debate. It has become a symbol of something larger, of the generational tension oiling across the country, of the question of who gets to speak and who gets to decide what words are worth the risk. And as the night falls, one thing is undeniable. This was not a moment that ended when the cameras cut. This was not a clash confined to a studio. It has become a cultural reckoning, replayed on screens across the world, etched into headlines and timelines, embedded in conversations that will stretch far beyond a single morning show. In the end, the aftermath leaves no easy resolution. Whoopi remains steadfast, her authority intact, but now questioned in ways it hadn't been before. Timothée leaves the stage not just as an actor promoting a film, but as a figure whose voice carries weight, whether the world is ready for it or not. And so the story of that morning concludes not with a clear victor, but with a question, one that lingers in the minds of everyone who watched, everyone who rewatched, everyone who argued in living rooms, in comment sections and newsrooms. When it comes to speaking truth in a world full of noise, who truly holds the power? The seasoned veteran with scars of experience, or the fearless youth who refuses to silence? The credits roll, the lights dim, but the question remains.